This is the first time on this show we've done a Paul Naschy movie. Have you ever heard of Paul Naschy before?
I've heard of him. I don't think I've ever seen a movie with
Yeah,
him.
the first one I saw was it was on TV. It was called Frankenstein's Bloody Terror, and there was no Frankenstein in it. It was because the producer had promised the distributor a Frankenstein movie, and he all he had was this
Oh,
werewolf movie, not this one, but the first Naschy one. And he said, "Well, I'll do a prologue where it says Frankenstein has
yeah.
turned to Wolfstein." So it's like, okay, it's a cool movie though. I mean, the first one, Frankenstein's Bloody Terror or Hell's Creatures or whatever it was called. Supposedly it was shot in 3D. I've never seen the 3D version of it, so I have no idea. But this is the fifth one that he did. This one, there's like the Frankenstein's Bloody Terror. There's I know the Werewolf versus the Vampire Woman. That's a good one. Fury of the Wolf Man. What was the other one? I can't remember what the other one was, but this one is Dr. Jekyll and the Wolf Man. Now this
Oh, Mr. Hyde, not Dr. Jekyll. Mr. Hyde versus the Wolfman.
no, the original title of the movie is Dr. Jekyll and the
Oh,
Wolf Man.
oh, was it really? Oh, okay.
Yeah, they didn't call it Mr. Hyde versus the Wolfman. They call it Dr. Jekyll versus the Wolfman. Whatever. I guess Dr.
Okay.
Jekyll is more of a, maybe I don't know. Of course, this movie was shot in Spanish, but there's
Yeah.
a German version, and unfortunately, we have a very chopped up version of this movie. That's the only one I could find on YouTube.
Yeah.
The one that I saw has an intro prologue, which was cut out for whatever reason, and the other one that I have has nudity in it, and it's a little bloodier or whatever. So we're getting a little bit of
That's
gore, and there's like some scenes that I think were just taken out completely. Like there was a scene where one of the criminals comes with the witch's head. Look what
yeah.
I
Yeah, that scene was in there. Well, the one I saw,
It
the
was
scene
in
was
there, but how did he didn't show him do anything? He didn't show her
no.
going
He
into
just
the
he just
forest.
shows up.
So
Yeah.
I have to find the other version that I have in storage and try to figure out, well, was this scene shown? Was it not shown? I do
Yeah.
know that towards the end of the movie, when he becomes Mr. Hyde, there's some like S&M scenes that were cut
Yeah.
out of this, between him and one of the two girls or whatever. So I'm like, okay, I seem to remember this movie being a little spicier, but all right, we get the basic idea
Yeah.
of the movie. Now Nashi was an interesting guy because he was like a Spanish actor and he hit it big with that movie. So he decided that he was gonna do like a run of werewolf movies because he that was the character that he got famous doing. But he was kind of like a Lon Chaney Senior type guy because he played did he ever play the Frankenstein much? He played the Mummy. I know that much. He played what was it? He played a lot of the Universal characters or whatever, but he's basically known. He played another one where he was like at the Hunchback of the Morgue. That was a pretty good one.
Yeah.
That was a pretty graphic one too. But it mostly werewolf movies. I think there's about 8 or 9 of these. They
Yeah. I think I read somewhere he's in him. He played. He was the actor who played the Wolfman the most in movies. I think.
More than Lon Chaney Jr. Yeah, no doubt
Yeah.
about
Well,
it.
yeah.
Because Chaney Jr. did the Wolfman, Frankenstein meets the Wolfman, and Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. Maybe there was another one. I don't remember, but he played him in a Route 66 television show or something like that. But
Yeah.
Nashi definitely. Now I'm trying to think of what other characters did Nashi play. I know there's a movie. It was a TV movie, I believe, that was made there where he actually got made up to be the Frankenstein monster and the Phantom of the Opera and all that. But it turns out that was just the movie, the TV movie, the Spanish TV movie was basically a dream the kid was having, and so now she got to play all the guys. But he basically known as he played Dracula, Count Dracula's Great Love, and all his movies, a lot of them, I wouldn't say all of them, have the theme of like he's like all these chicks are attracted to him. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, fine, and the only way you can cure him is the woman who loves him has to shoot him, or as Dracula's case, has to put a stake in his heart. That's the only way they're going to be able to kill him. So that was his little plot twist or whatever. There's a documentary on YouTube. It's called "The Man Who Saw Frankenstein Cry." I think it's just called. I think they just call it Naschy Documentary. It's on YouTube. I'll see if I
Yeah.
can find it and send it to you. And it's a really good documentary on his life. It's half of it's in
Oh,
Spanish, but it's got subtitles that are a little bit hard to read. But you get the basic idea. But all sorts of people, talk about it. Don Glut had him in a movie in the
yeah.
'90s, one of his later movies. Joe Dante. A bunch of other people talk about him or whatever. His sons, his wife. He became a worldwide, not phenomenon, but character. Because of some of the
Yeah.
movies that Fury of the Wolfman, I remember got shown on TV back in the '70s. I don't think I ever saw it on television, but some of these didn't get shit shown on television, even though I remember seeing TV prints of them because they were a little rough. And there was,
Mm.
since you're talking about the '70s, by the time '71, '72, there was nudity, there was gore. You know,
Yeah.
there was one where he was like, what was it called? Where he played like a prince, like a knight that came back to life, and
Mm.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of cool. He was like a fan of Universal.
Yeah.
He was a fan of these movies that got to make them. And there's also this subplot within the Nazi mythology of like back in those days in Spain, there was a lot of restricted editing. There's a lot of restrictions brought about by the Franco regime. And as soon
Yeah.
as Franco died and it changed, people went overboard showing
Yeah.
gore and nudity. It was like, oh, really? We can do this now? Yeah, so
Usually happened. Yeah.
there's this one movie, and it's butchered to pieces. It's called It Happened at the Nightmare Inn. And when I saw the full version of this movie, I was like, whoa, this is one messed up movie, And it was like the version that you see on TV is cut from like 1 hour and 20 minutes to an hour, but there's a lot of
Wow.
stuff that I wouldn't even want to talk about on this show that was shown in this movie. And I'm like, they really went nuts. There was another one that I don't know if it ever got shown here, but it's a really strange one. I just found it on the torrent site. I think it was called I Hate My Body, and it's it's about a guy who's in a car accident and he dies, but a mad doctor takes a body and puts his brain into the brain of a beautiful woman who just died. So when he wakes up, he's in the body of a beautiful woman. It's bizarre movie. It's total gender bender thing. He's like, now he's in the brain of the woman, and he's like, and there's a female, and he's meeting guys, and it's just bizarre. It's called I Hate My Body. It's an interesting movie. There was one of these that I saw as a kid. We should watch it one day. It's called The House That Screamed. And
That sounds familiar. House that screamed.
it's got a weird story to it. It was like when I was a kid, we used to have these friends of ours. We're Cubans. Other Cuban friends, and one of the friends, their nephew had just left Cuba. Was able to leave Cuba. Went to Spain. Then from
Hmm.
Spain he came to the U.S. and he was living with them. And he was a little bit older than me, but he was a cool dude. And we were talking about horror movies sometimes because it was always all the creature features. This early '70s. He said, "Oh, I saw a movie in Spain called La Residencia, which is like the residence or whatever." And it's about this guy who like kills this young man who lives in a boarding house for girls, and he's very his mother's like, oh, you don't want to go anywhere near these girls, they're not worthy of you, whatever. And it becomes a murder mystery. And I remember him telling me about this movie because it's got a weird plot to it. And then all of a sudden it was like in the local theater near my house they played a movie called The House That Screamed, and the trailer had that premise to it. I remember watching it and I was like, oh wow, this is that movie La Residencia. So I told him, and he's like, yeah, that's it. I didn't know they dubbed it in English, so we'll watch it one day. That's another weird one, but that's definitely within the framework of the restrictions on Spanish films when the Franco
Right.
regime and when they went afterwards, like all the way, like this heavy Catholicism and this like hatred of it, kind of in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's weird, but anyway, getting back to our movie. This is Paul Naschy is the star. The other guy who's in this movie, the Dr. Jekyll, his name
Hmm.
is Jack Taylor. He's an American actor who
Mm.
went over to Mexico and then to Spain and basically made a career kind of doing these movies and Jess Franco movies. the infamous Jess Franco movie. So there's a lot of he's a very interesting character, and he dubbed a lot of movies too, and he still lives in Spain too. And I think he became like kind of a cult figure in
Mm-hmm.
Europe, and he's probably one of the last remaining actors who was in these movies that's still alive today. I can't think of any. I can think of some of the women, like the doctor's assistant in this movie, Mirta Miller. She's still alive, but a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them have passed away sadly because these movies are what 50 years old now or something
So,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
You know, I
I
mean,
can't believe the '70s was like 50 years ago.
I mean,
Whoa.
I mean, you remember when we were kids, we would read Famous Monsters, and those movies were only like 25 years old, maybe
Yeah,
30.
yeah,
We're talking about 50-year-old movies, and this is 1970. You
yeah.
know, 70, 71, 72. To me, those like from 60s to like 73 or 4, that was like to me my favorite era of B movies,
Mhm.
music, and stuff like that. With music, it's more like from the Beatles to 74, 75. But
Mm.
after 75, a lot of these horror movies, they either stopped making them, and by 1977, when Star Wars became like you
The big
know,
thing,
the
yeah.
big
Then special
thing,
effects
yeah,
went really crazy now, and then they, with Night of the Living Dead,
yes,
after that came out, then everything was a gore fest, blood spurting from
oh
severed
God,
heads, and
yeah,
it took all the, I don't know, the
it took
fun
the
out of
fun
it.
out of it, exactly. Yeah, it's like when that movie came out, and then Star Wars, and then the gore movies came out after that, and it became all like Fangoria style. You ever buy Fangoria magazine? Remember like
Yeah,
back in the
and they
day?
didn't, it didn't have the same
No.
oomph.
I saw some of those movies. I mean, I went to the theater and
Yeah,
saw some. Some of them were creepy, but mostly it was just like, hey, let's do a special effect of like a guy putting a drill through his head. You know, it's like,
yeah,
okay, it was more sadistic than
yeah.
scary. You know what I mean?
Well,
So it was,
they call it gore porn because it's
yeah,
just like an over abundance of and like an over graphic vision of gore. Like, and people don't. You're spurting out more blood than the human body can contain.
yeah. But that has to do with the special effects thing.
Yeah,
When Star Wars became the big special effects movie, well then the gore people like the guy who did all the effects for the Savini, Tom Savini.
yeah,
Well,
sounds convenient.
then he inspired all these other guys to
Yeah,
like go crazy with the gore, and that's fine and dandy. You know, a little dab of it is fine and dandy, but don't make it like the reason for the movie. Only the movie just to show it. Don't set up a movie just to show this gore effect, and then it's like,
yeah,
oh, we saw it, that was gory, and then boom, that's it. I
yeah,
mean, I remember going and seeing a couple of Lucio Fulci movies, The House by the Cemetery or whatever. And I mean, they were okay. There was atmosphere, but the gore just kind of kills. It becomes itself the
yeah.
reason for the movie as opposed to any other thing. And then there was another one. Remember Zombie? There was one called Zombie from the late 70s. That was a really early one that was really disturbing. It was like it was like the cover of it's got a zombie head, and it's
Yeah.
like and the catchphrase is they're coming to eat you. I mean, it's all this is all came after Dawn of the Dead, which is a fine movie. And you know what? Interesting topic, interesting thing. When I was working with Don at the graphics place, during the break, I was talking to these friends of mine, well, coworkers, and there was this guy that was there who was a nice guy, but he wasn't really like a pal, but I knew him. He
Hmm.
was he was another he was he worked more in Photoshop, and we worked more as the typesetting guys. And I was
Yeah.
talking about movies, and then like he was on the other side of the he was on the other, there was like a wall, between the separations between the little cubicles, and he pops up and he looks at me, he goes, remember this? And he shows me a picture of in Dawn of the Dead there was a Hare Krishna zombie. It was him.
Yeah. Oh, no kidding.
It was him. I go, that's you? And he goes, yeah. And he signed it to me. And he
Oh,
goes,
cool.
see you in hell. Hell. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I don't want
Cool.
spillage.
That is cool, man.
Yeah, Michael. Yeah, and I was like, dude, that's you. And I go, why aren't you doing conventions? And he goes, nah, there's no money in it. And then when he got let go. He made money doing conventions. Dawn of the Dead had its 30th anniversary, and he was going to all the shows. And so I worked with his, like the movie I Walked with a Zombie. Well, I worked with a zombie, but anyway, we digress. Another genre that I didn't like from the 70s was the Exorcist stuff. I didn't care for that anymore. I didn't like those movies at all. And they made a lot of them too.
It was the first I saw The Exorcist, and that scared the hell out of me. It was creepy because I was raised Roman Catholic, and that's all like.
You don't want to hear all that blasphemy,
That's all your worst nightmares.
I'm Catholic too,
The subsequent ones, it was this is a movie about special effects. It's almost like a show reel, like if some guy's doing a show reel to get hired for the movies. So this is the special effect I did for this. This is how I made the head turn around. It's just too much.
Now, The Exorcist was genuinely disturbing.
Yeah.
But then again, director William Friedkin did a lot of disturbing movies in the 70s. Yeah. But that was definitely like a disturbing movie. It was well made. And I don't know if I told you this, but when I was a kid, one of the worst double features of all time, I saw The Exorcist on a double feature with Deliverance. So you can imagine,
Deliverance was creepy too.
Holy crap. What an afternoon that was, It's like
you're coming out twitching.
Those two movies are like the epitome of the 70s to me. It's like bummer, it's like all this horror and all this. Oh yeah, that was. Oh god, and we just went in to see them because we were like 15 and they let us in. We didn't know what to expect, but I did see another Exorcist type movie called Beyond the Door, and that movie, my buddy Alex watched a couple of our shows, and he's freaked out by. He remembers like watching the trailer for Beyond the Door, like late nights on television when he was watching the Tonight Show, and that kind of creeped him out. And I remember seeing that movie, and it was creepy, but it wasn't as horrific as The Exorcist. But I know a lot of people don't like it, but I liked it, and one of the reasons I liked it was because the woman that's possessed in it was Juliet Mills, who played the nanny in Nanny and the Professor.
Oh, yeah.
That's Haley Mills' sister.
Yeah, wow, that's cool. I never knew that.
So she got away from that genre by making this horrible movie where she's like her head's spinning around and she's all, but at any rate, I like the special effects on the Werewolf movie because they're kind of like simplistic, and they're effective, but as the techniques came, I mean, remember all the stuff they did, and it was like it becomes an effect rather than in these Naschy movies. It's part of the story. He turns into a werewolf. Okay, he turned into a werewolf. It's not this long extended scene to show you how great my talent is to, create this makeup. He's like, okay, he looks like a wolf, man. Let's go, rock and roll. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, the American Werewolf in London. Part of it was really good. Like the guy who was his friend who was slowly.
Yeah, that was funny.
That was good special effects because it was really subtle. But like you said, him changing into the wolf and the hand growing and stuff. All they could have done was just show that one scene.
Yeah.
They didn't need to go through that. I don't know. It's like 20 minutes of the movie of him like changing and growing. It just kind of took you out of the movie. That's what it does. It takes you out of the movie, and you're just looking at the special effects, and it's like, oh, that's interesting, but it doesn't really add anything to the story. It really.
I mean, to a lot of people, maybe not me or maybe not you, it kind of makes it more believable to them because wow, that was a really good effect. Now I believe the movie as opposed to, oh, look at this guy. They're just putting hair on his face. It looks hokey because compared to what American Werewolf did, so that's what happened, whereas these movies that they considered hokey, to me were more, they were better because they were more, it was about the character as opposed to what we can do, how believable we can make it. And the reality is, however you want to do special effect of a guy turning into a werewolf, it's still unbelievable. That's not going to happen, you know what I mean? Yeah. They're doing their best to make it look as cool as possible, But that's what happened in the late 70s. The special effect became the star of the movie, for lack of a better. I mean, Star Wars will sell you, no, it's a story, and it did have a good story, but to me, it's like in a lot of these movies, and American Werewolf did have a good story. A lot of these movies, it was just like, here's the great scene. We're gonna tease you with it in the trailer, and then if you pay $4 to see the movie, you're gonna see the whole scene and blah blah blah. Early '70s, like we talked about before, they were just starting to get away with gore, and they were just starting to get away with some serious nudity and topics. And the Europeans were always making spicier movies than the Americans were up until maybe the '70s, because in some of those old Hammer movies, like a couple of them, not all of them, some of them had nude scenes in them that were never shown in the U.S., but I've never seen before, but I've read that they were shown there was continental versions they talk about that they were shown in France or Italy, not Spain, because that was a heavy Catholic country or whatever, but anyway, that's kind of like the way I feel about these movies. So I like the special effects movies kind of up until The Exorcist. And then from then on, it became more, it was about that. Before that, it was about the character. And this movie is a character-driven movie, but it does get kind of confusing with the storyline. Naschy played this character in all his movies, Waldemar Daninsky. But there's no, the character does, the one movie doesn't end and the next one begins. They're all kind of like all over the place. It's like different adventures. He has different origins sometimes. There's other ones where he fights a Yeti. There's other ones. Yeah. It was like, hey, the Bigfoot is a big deal. Let's have him fight a Yeti. Okay, we can sell that. You know what I mean? The werewolf versus the Yeti. Yeah, I want to go see that. You know what I mean? So it was like, so this one had an interesting concept. It's the Wolfman. Did they explain in the beginning why he was a Wolfman, or was he just cursed?
He was just cursed, and
that old woman was kind of like his body. He was protecting him.
Yeah, protector. And they thought she was a witch, but I don't know if she was or not. And it's almost like the family had a curse. That's the feeling I got from it.
Yeah, that was the feeling. It was never really totally explained. Now, the intro to this movie that we didn't see in this version of it, it's just basically the same party scene, and they're in the house, and there's a big wolf's head, and then Jack Taylor, who's Dr. Jekyll, explains, oh, well, there's a legend of the werewolves and blah blah. So he does a little bit of Wolfman preparatory, is preparing us for what's going to happen later. So that was cut out, and I got a feeling this was cut out because I remember back in 2005, Dollar Tree for Halloween used to have a bunch of horror movies that they would double feature for $1, and this one was part of them. And all of a sudden, I had another version of it from Sinister Cinema, which was more complete, but not as good of a print. But the intro was cut out, and I think that's because they just basically said we don't want to get in trouble with a perspective, somebody who owns the movie, so we just cut it out. And so there is a little beginning part, but you don't really miss a lot, but you do miss the credits and you do miss the title, which might have been in Spanish in that version, because I know there's a DVD that I have that's dubbed in English, but the titles are in Spanish. Yeah. So then that's what happened too with all these Euro movies. They came over here, they get retitled, they get anglicized credits.
They get cut up, and because this movie seemed to start in the middle somewhere, like suddenly.
Yeah, and it does.
Who are these people? What are they doing? And I didn't even know they were newlyweds until I was reading about it.
In the beginning, I remember in the very beginning of it, it starts out at the party, and he did talk about wanting to go on to the honeymoon in Transylvania. She wanted to go. It's like, my relatives are from Transylvania, and I'm like, oh, really? That's nice.
What?
Once again, we're going to divert from there is a Transylvania University in the United States. I
heard that. I forget where it is, but
there is a Transylvania University, which is hilarious, So when you say, I'm going to Transylvania University, but, let me ask you a question before. You're not swigging a bottle of whiskey, are you? No, I'm just kidding.
No, it's iced tea.
I just look at the back and I go, is that Johnny Walker Red or something like that?
If it was whiskey, I'd probably be more talkative and interesting. and slurring.
I thought it was a little Johnny Walker action going on there. He goes, man, that's pretty good, So anyway, they're at some party and they're talking, and the main guy, the groom Emery, whatever Emery, okay, and his trophy wife, who's like 25 years younger than him.
Yeah.
They're going to their honeymoon in Transylvania. She wants to do it. I was like, okay, well.
So Dr. Jekyll was at that party, and I totally
missed
that.
But they didn't call him Dr. Jekyll, I don't think.
I totally missed that. So,
he is at the party. He in the intro that was cut out of the version we saw. He's prominent in it, talking about the werewolf legend or whatever. When they see the wolf's head on the wall, so he and also in the beginning of it, they talk more about his relationship with the bride of Emery. They were like lovers, and then they broke up, and then she met Grandpa, and
that's right. Yeah, that's right. Well, again, I didn't even know anything about that until like half in the middle of the movie when she goes back.
Yeah, that's when you find out about it. But I think in the intro, if I remember correctly, it was in Spanish, which I can't understand, but it's in Spain Spanish. There's a lot of lisping going on, which is a little annoying. But anyway, that's another one. So anyway, yeah, you find out midway through that Dr. Jekyll is still in love with her. They broke up, but that'll come later. So they're going on their honeymoon to Transylvania, and they want to go to where his parents lived and where they're buried, and then they're driving and they end up, I don't know if the car broke down at this point, but they end up at an inn, and that old man's telling them about the story of like, don't go near the castle and blah blah blah.
Yeah, there's evil there.
And when the car broke down, she was wandering and she came across some burn guy that was like, he's like, and then he grabs her and he throws a rock at the guy, and he's like, okay, yeah.
And he didn't do anything. I mean, he's just sitting there.
He was just burned up. He was just burned up, I was like, okay.
I mean, everything. She's screaming, and a butterfly comes in there, and she's screaming. And
yeah, she was a little high strung.
Yeah.
I forgot what her name was in the movie. She was played an actress called Shirley Corrigan, which I don't know if she was in any other movies, but she was pretty good looking. But anyway, so their car breaks down. They stop there. And then after they see the car broke down, and then they came across the guy, and then they were able to get the car started again. So they end up at the inn, and the guy tells them about the castle. Don't go near the castle, because he's looking for where his parents were buried. And he goes, well, that's near the castle. You don't want to go there. It's cursed. Blah blah blah. Now I don't remember if in that scene those crooks were listening on.
I think they were sitting. Were they? Yeah, I think they were sitting at the next table listening or something.
They were probably listening, because it's like the next scene you see is them going to the cemetery, and they're looking at the graves or whatever, and then when they're like ready to get back, she sees the three guys in his car
trying to steal the
car, and then he goes and he tries to fight them, but they kill him. The main guy kills him.
Yeah.
And then she's like, they're coming to get her, and they're going to rape her. And I don't know if that's another edited scene or not, but whatever. And then all of a sudden, Paul Naschy comes out, and he beats the crap out of two of them. But the old guy...
He holds some guy in
he puts him in a bear hug, right?
A bear hug, and then kills him. Gets suffocated.
And the other guy, he brains him he punches him, and then he brains him with a rock.
Kills him with a rock, yeah.
And then you saw that gore effect, and it was like, oh, okay, we got a little bit of gore here. Then the old guy, the ringleader, leaves, and he shows up like 2 or 3 more times too. If I remember correctly, he doesn't get killed yet. So anyway, so Paul Naschy brings her to the house. She passes out.
Yeah.
And he brings her into the house, and he puts her in a room, and the old lady takes care of her, and then she finally wakes up, and then you see scenes of her going through the castle, and this is why I like these Euro movies, because when they're doing the scenes in a real castle,
it looks like a castle. It doesn't look like a back lot.
You kind of feel the atmosphere of reality, as opposed to like a Universal movie, which is beautiful, but it's a recreation, pretty much, of like castle. Unless it's like an old haunted house or whatever. But even the Psycho house was a recreation. So you really see a castle, and you kind of get a feeling of the history and the ghostly and the creepy. It's really creepy when you go through. It's all dark, and you can just imagine living in one of these places.
Yeah.
It's probably cold as hell in there.
Yes.
There's there's these nice rooms, but you got to go through all these like catacombs and all these like there's like oh it's just I love that. That's the reason why
Yeah.
I love these movies. So anyway, she's walking through the castle, and then she comes across.
She comes to like a balustrade or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
where she can look down into, I guess it's a big dining hall, and she sees her dead husband on the,
And Nashi's there.
and not, yeah, so she, again, screams and runs.
And then it turns out that him and his assistant just were gonna revive his body to bury him or whatever.
Right,
So they actually buried him in the yard there with I guess with in the cemetery with his parents
right.
or whatever. So she's like she tells he kind of like talks to her. He goes, I'm sorry, blah blah blah, and all this. And she's like, of course, within like 10 minutes, she's falling in love with him or whatever. And the old lady, she's trying to get some information about it from the old lady, but the old lady's like, well, I don't know.
It's crazy,
He's old family, blah blah blah, or whatever. So they're there, and then at some point, I forgot how it happened. Oh, I think the it cuts back to I think the old criminal guy, and he's back in the inn, and he's saying, hey, to some other his buddies, we got to go back there and avenge the murder of
yes, of my brother who who killed one person and tried to rape
yeah,
another.
we got to go back there. We got to go back there and get this guy. So
Yeah, and the innkeeper's like, oh, it's evil, don't go there, and
and then
there's the witch and
and
all
then
that
I
stuff.
don't remember what the exact timeline, but then I don't know if it went from that scene to it cuts to a scene where the criminal the villagers are starting to get all worked up because they're talking
Right.
about how like he's back the monster and blah blah, and he comes back with the severed head of the old lady, and he goes, look,
Yeah.
here's the witch. I saw her walking through the woods, and I like decapitated her or whatever. Let's go back to the castle and like get him. And I
To
forgot what the,
get rid of the evil from this land.
yeah, get rid of the eel from this land or whatever. And they're like all worked up. And then I think Nashi and the girl
They're
decide
planning to leave.
they're planning to leave, right? And
Right.
as they're leaving, they come across the three bad guys again. And Nashi does he kill them? And he finally kills the old guy, I think.
Yeah, he wrestles or defeats them.
And he kills the old guy, he stabs him.
Yeah, he stabs the old guy, and then they get in the car and drive off.
So I don't remember what the villagers if they did anything.
I think they were going to do something, and he came out, and they tried to attack him, but he started like beating them up or killing. He killed
Yeah,
somebody and then ran away.
because at some point there was a scene where you see her watching him transform into a
Right,
wolf man.
right.
And he killed somebody. I forgot who he killed, but he killed somebody when he was a wolf man or whatever. The criminals he pretty much killed and beat up when he was like Valdemar Daninsky, a normal guy or whatever. So he turned into so she knows what the deal is with him, and she's like she thinks at this point after they're done in Transylvania after he kills the bad guys and they're getting ready to leave, she goes, it cuts to a completely different scene where she knows Doctor. You go to London.
Yeah,
You're in London. They leave there. They go back to London, and then you see the building, Dr. Henry Jekyll,
right.
and she's talking to him, and then that's where you find out that they
They
were
used to
both
be.
they were both lovers, and
Right.
she's like, well, I know you're like the son of Dr. Jekyll, and your dad was experimented with all these to burn out the dark side or whatever, and my lover, Valdemar, he's here. I think you can cure him, and he's like, at first Jack Taylor's like, I don't know about this,
He doesn't believe her that he can turn into a wolf. He thinks she's a little.
Yeah, right.
Either she's crazy or he's crazy, thinking he's a werewolf or something.
Yeah, but she convinces him or whatever
Yeah,
after he meets him, and then he's like, okay, well, look, we're gonna have to do this during the full moon or whatever, and his idea is it's a weird idea. It's like I have what is it? I have the Dr. Jekyll formula,
right.
and when he turns in, before he turns into the werewolf, I'm going to turn him into Mr. Hyde.
And to see if Mr. Hyde is stronger than the werewolf, it will destroy the werewolf.
And then I have the cure for Mr. Hyde.
And I'll cure Mr. Hyde, and he'll be cured perfectly. I mean, it within the movie, it kind of made sense, but when you think of it, you're like, what?
And then there was that one scene where when he was going to see the doctor, where he gets stuck on the elevator, and then the full moon pops up, and then he's like kills a woman in the elevator, and he goes out on the rampage. I think that's what finally convinced Jack Taylor or Dr. Hyde or Mr. Hyde or Dr. Jekyll that he's really a wolf man. He goes, okay, I have an idea. Now you get another plot twist where it's like Dr. Jekyll has his assistant, Myrta Miller.
She's in love with Dr. Jekyll.
And she knows about the romantic thing between him and the other one, so she's trying to she's like, no, you don't want to get involved in this, but she goes, okay, fine, go ahead and do it, So she's kind of like jealous of all this that's going on or whatever. And then there was one scene where she went out to get supplies, and she saw Shirley Corrigan, the blonde, Valdemar's girlfriend or whatever, give him a kiss, and then she's like, oh, really? So you're back together again, and it was like, okay.
It's strange because if Dr. Jekyll cured
Mr. Hyde,
then his old girlfriend and Mr. Hyde would, Valdemar would go off together, leaving him free, so then she could move in. So why would she try to sabotage? It didn't make sense, that part.
I think that's possible that she thought that he was just wanting to cure him, but when she saw the two together, she started to think, oh, they're going to get back together, and he's going to dump me, and then I know we're missing some part of this movie because I think this movie was edited. Something was missing from this version we saw of it, but we'll just go with what we have. So basically, the scene happens where the full moon's getting ready to come up. He turns into a werewolf, and then he shoots him with the Jekyll, and then all of a sudden it's like he turns into Mr. Hyde.
Yes.
And he's like, oh, he's Mr. Hyde now, and Mr. Hyde's like, get me out of here. So he's like, oh, now at some point we can cure you. And then she's like, oh yeah, and then she turns around, right, and she stabs Dr. Jekyll in the back with a knife. She kills him.
Yeah.
Yeah, right after he transforms him into Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, she turns around and kills Dr. Jekyll out of jealousy or something like that. But there was also another subplot where she said, no, we have to use this because this is this great.
Yeah, she wants to control, create an army of Mr. Hyde.
Yeah, she's like another mad scientist or something like that. There's this whole goofy, storyline going in there where she wants to use it for another alternative purpose, and he doesn't want to do it. Right. He just wants to. So I don't know if it was a combination of that and jealousy, but she turns around and she kills Dr. Jekyll, and in turn sets Mr. Hyde free, and in turn. Some missing scenes, which I believe Mr. Hyde was messing around with her. I don't remember, but Mr. Hyde turns out and he kills her. He throws her on the pitchfork or something like that.
Spikes or whatever that. Yeah.
So now Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is free. So there's a couple of scenes where he throws a guy in the lake.
In the river. Yeah, a guy asks him for a light and he throws him in the river. Right? He asked him
he asked him for a light, and Mr. Hyde's like, oh, I'll give you a light, and he throws him with a cane, he knocks him in the river or whatever, in the London, in the Thames or whatever river.
He's at a nightclub.
Yeah, he's in a nightclub picking up and he's he looks insane. He's got he's got this greenish skin and his longish hair, and he's got his eyebrows that are waxed up or whatever. So he picks up some swinging London girl or whatever. Now she's like, oh yeah, I'll come back and get a drink, and then we can go out. Because, if you ever watched the original Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde movie, the original, which I hadn't seen up until 10 years ago, it's kind of sleazy. Mr. Hyde would go out and like, into bondage and pick up hookers and kill them and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I guess they were kind of hinting at that. So he picks her up and she goes to get a drink, and when she comes back,
He had converted back to.
he's Valdemar Daninsky. He's normal. So he's like, oh, okay. So she's like, hey, where's my friend? He's gone now. And he's like,
ugly looking friend.
and he's like, all of a sudden he's like confused. And then of course you get a shot of the moon outside becoming a full moon.
And then he becomes a werewolf.
And then he becomes a werewolf.
And then everybody in the club panics and runs away. And then he goes on a berserk.
Yeah, he goes on a rant. He kills a couple of women, I believe, or something. And then basically the last scene was he confronts his girlfriend, and
Right.
And there was a scene where when Dr. Jekyll was dying, he basically told his ex-girlfriend that, look, there's a drawer in there with silver bullets,
Yes.
and if you need to use them, and it's the only way you're really going to cure him of this, and blah blah blah. So and then he dies, and it's like, oh, okay. So she already knows what to do. So that just leads you up to the final scene where he's like, which I think was edited also,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna try to find the original one and discuss and tell you what was missing from it on the next show, because I'm sure we're missing something important here. But the last scene is he goes back to the laboratory and she's there. And he's like, he's all like insane werewolf, like drooling, blood coming out of his mouth or whatever. And she's like, no, Voldemort, don't do it, blah, 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 don't do it. And he's like coming up to her. And I think he kills her, but he hurts her. He cuts her or something like that because she's laying on the ground when she shoots him.
I thought they both died.
I think they both died, yeah, but she shoots him though.
He shoots him.
He wounded her.
And he's dying, he kills her.
He mortally wounded her, but she was still alive enough to grab the gun,
right,
and shoot him with the silver bullets, and kill him. So basically, in the end of this movie, everybody's dead.
Yeah, and they both like die next to each other.
Yeah, it's like in love or whatever, but everybody's died. Dr. Jekyll's died, the bride, Emery's died, the assistant's dead, all the criminals are dead, the burn victim assistant. Yeah, everybody. This is a bummer. This is the 70s. Another movie, the 70s in a nutshell. Yeah. Everybody dies at the end.
Yeah.
But it was okay. I mean, I don't think this ever showed on TV here.
No, probably not. I don't think you could get away. You could have gotten away with it back then, because even.
But it was pretty clean. What we saw was pretty clean.
Yeah, but we're also, used to the real big gore fest. But back then, like if you saw somebody with blood on their head, it was like too shocking, and the censors would cut it out.
Well, when I was younger, I remember like in the late '60s, maybe early '70s, local channel showed The Brain That Wouldn't Die, and that was like pretty gory for its time. The guy gets his arm ripped off, and
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I remember that being on UHF channels, and even some of those earlier than that, the Hammer movies, some of the Dracula ones, all the blood coming out, and like, they were pretty rough for the times, but not as much as like by like, I don't know what movie changed it, but there was some movie in the early 70s that it was probably those Herschel Gordon Lewis movies, the blood feast and all that stuff. That kind of like paved the way. And those did show in drive-ins, unrated, and people would go see them and freak out. So that kind of paved the way for the.
There's also a movie. I remember this came out. Maybe it was in the late '60s. The Mark of the Devil.
Oh, that was an infamous one. Yeah.
Where they supposedly showed a lot of really gore and stuff, and people were like hurling, and they handed out vomit bags.
My friend bought one at a show one time. Yeah, that was the one where the main scene, there was like some woman getting her tongue ripped out of her head, and that was the same thing as Blood Feast, but that was more graphic, I believe, than Mark of the Devil. That's right, because Mark of the Devil was influenced by that one Conqueror Worm. Remember?
Vincent Price.
The Vincent Price one. That one was kind of gory for its time, and it was around 68, 69 or whatever, and that kind of set the pace for Mark of the Devil. Was kind of like a rip-off of it,
Yeah.
Even though Conqueror was a British movie, it was kind of like a more whatever a rip off of it. And then in the early 70s, I don't remember what year I saw them, but remember they used to have they had those Andy Warhol's Frankenstein, Andy Warhol's
Yeah,
Dracula.
and Dracula. I saw those.
Those were spoofs, but they were pretty gory.
Yeah, they were gory and weird. Weird too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And Andy Warhol had absolutely nothing to do with it except he put his name on. I mean, one of his actors,
yeah, that
Joe
Joe.
D'Alessandro, was in
Yeah.
them. You know, but the other guy, the guy who played Frankenstein and Dracula, Udo Kier, he was one of the guys in Mark of the Devil. He was one of the main actors in
Oh,
Mark
was
of the
he really?
Devil.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was,
Okay.
you know, back in the those Herschel Gordon Lewis movies, those kind of like low budget, underneath the radar, gory things. They kind of set the trend for as much as you know for. And then there was even like what was that movie Sam Peckinpah, The Wild Bunch.
Yes, the Wild Bunch.
That was
Yeah,
kind of a gory movie at the end. You
that
see
was
people all blown to
bloody and
pieces,
yeah,
you know. So that was kind of setting the pace for a lot of this stuff. So there was a lot of blood and guts going on in the early 70s. Dirty Harry.
what's that? Oh, Bonnie and Clyde. I couldn't.
Bonnie and Clyde
My
was
mother,
earlier, that last scene, yeah.
yeah, mother wouldn't let me go see that. Well, she wouldn't let me go see it. One, because she heard it was bloody, but two, she thought it glorified
Violence.
bad guys.
Yeah.
It made them out to be heroes, and she was really against.
I don't blame her one bit, but it didn't really it kind of it made it that I watched that movie not long ago. It's okay. I don't like it. I don't love it or anything. I watched it
Yeah,
and it kind of makes it seem like it's cool, but it also they end up being in a really messed up. They all
yeah,
get killed, and in the movie in that movie, they even Clyde's like impotent. You know what I mean? So they
yeah.
weren't really made positive, but that was an early example of like real bloody
Yeah,
American
an
filmmaking,
early downer movie.
counterculture.
The stars of the movie die. And
Yeah,
there was also a movie with John Wayne. It was a war movie, The Green Berets. Was
that
that
was
it?
yeah, the Green Berets. That was gory too.
That was gory too. Yeah, really gory and bloody. And
I never saw that one. Wow, I didn't realize that was gory too.
yeah, well, well, for that time, gory.
For
But
that
remember,
time.
one guy there was a German sniper nest or machine gun nest. He runs up and he throws a grenade in, and as he throws it in, he gets shot. And he turns around and blood's pouring out of him like a spigot.
Oh
You're like,
wow.
whoa, yeah. But back then, that was like really.
Yeah, so
But
those early, well, Night of the Living Dead, you know,
yes,
obviously
I did a
opened
little
up,
bit
but that was black. Yeah, that was even black and white, but it was still that was 67 or 68. That one
yeah,
kind of was another one that it was a gory movie, but it became a really well-known movie and a pretty famous movie, and it was shown all over the place. So directors were kind of like, oh, this is another angle that maybe we can
right,
exploit.
yeah,
And at that time already the movies were becoming more permissive. There was a little bit of nudity in some
right.
movies. And then around 69 there was a Rosemary's Baby, it became a big movie, and then that but that
Yeah,
kind of spawned off on The Exorcist. That kind of was the beginning of that
yeah.
whole and it kind of
Yeah, there's a whole spate of
supernatural
supernatural demon, witch, monster movie.
which actually seeped into a lot of the TV movies.
Yeah, Hope Lang was in a lot of them where she was a reincarnated witch, the plot was usually the same. This couple buy a house somewhere in Connecticut that's lonely and desolate. The husband keeps going to work in New York City, leaving her alone, and weird things are happening, and weird townspeople or weird monsters hiding in the chimney or something like that. And it was just like creepy and weird. And then I think the culmination was that trilogy of terror with
Oh, Karen Black.
Aaron Black. And I forget, I forget the two stories.
The first
But
two aren't that great. They're kind of
no, but the
like
last one with the Zuni
with the little doll, the little
little
African
dog,
doll.
get the hell out of me.
Well, the Night Stalker, you know, the Darren
Yeah,
McGavin movie,
yeah,
that was rough
that was
too.
that was cool. The TV series was fun to watch,
It
but
was fun.
it wasn't that scary.
It wasn't as
I remember,
scary.
I remember seeing this really short movie where this there was no dialogue in it, and this woman, because I came in on the middle of it, she was being chased by this ventriloquist dummy.
Oh, wow.
And no dialogue, just eerie, creepy music.
There was there was a movie from the early '60s or late '50s. It was called Dementia, and it was a black and white movie, and it was silent except for like sound effects.
Yeah.
And I don't. Maybe that was it. Maybe that's it.
Maybe. But I remember this one scene where she's hiding in the bathroom, and the dummy has a kitchen knife, and you see the knife coming in under the door trying to get her. And she's trying to grab the knife and cutting her hands. And the way they filmed it was like, oh my God, that's so creepy. She finally gets the knife, she opens the door, and she starts stabbing the dummy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't watch anymore.
No, I think that's another movie, and you know what? It sounds familiar to me, but you know, in my aging years, I keep forgetting. I used to be really good at remembering all this, but it sounds like another movie that I've seen. There's a lot of those ventriloquist doll movies, like the Devil Doll and stuff like that.
Yeah, I hate it.
Oh, my friend hates those too.
That was spooky and scary, and there was one movie where this doll comes back to life, or comes to life, and it's strangling the guy. It just. Ugh.
Well, there was that one later on that was a big budget movie with Anthony Hopkins and Margaret, Magic. But the black and white ones were scarier to me, and I was like, Devil Doll was the one that I remember seeing. That was a ventriloquist guy, and he had his dummy, and the dummy would come back to life. Yeah, that whole concept is bizarre. Yeah. And it seeps into comic books too. I find every once in a while when I'm posting stories, I see like a ventriloquist dummy one, and I send them to this friend of mine who's like gets creeped out by it, and he goes, "Thanks a lot. I want to have nightmares or whatever." And I'm like, see, that creeps me out, but it doesn't really. It doesn't. It's not the one that we were supposed to do another movie today, which we'll do next time. But the one genre, the one that from that era, from the '60s, that creeped me out the most was the disembodied head thing.
Yeah, that's eerie.
And this one we're going to be talking about next show has a combination of that and the whole another subgenre of the Nazis reviving the dead or whatever. That started with they saved Hitler's brain, and then there was another one that was filmed in Florida in the '70s called Shockwaves, which was a similar.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
That was shot. It was with Peter Cushing. That was shot in Florida back in the '70s.
I think there was another one where it was like Rasputin's head is still alive.
No, it's Nostradamus' head, I think.
Oh, Nostradamus, that's it. Yeah.
Oh, that was a crappy movie. Oh, yeah.
But still, just as creepy, that head just sitting there.
And then there was that one. I think it was called The Head, it was called The Head That Wouldn't Die, The Thing That Couldn't Die, which it was a Spanish conquistador. It was a conquistador's head that was buried in his head was buried in one thing and his body was in another one, and it was in California, and some girl with a divining rod finds it and it brings him back to life. That was at Universal, and that's a good one too. I remember seeing that too. There's a whole subgenre of those. We'll talk about them in the next show or whatever. We're gonna do a double feature, but things happened and I couldn't watch the other one, which I have seen before many times, but like I told Roddy, I want to watch it again so I can talk about it.
Yeah.
I don't want to just say like, okay, here's what I remember, because there's a lot of, but it is creepy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a creepy movie. It was good, and it kind of had that Hammer feel. Yes. But it was a little better than a Hammer movie.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't. Hammer would fall back on cheesy cliches a lot of the time.
I mean, that one scene where she's dreaming and so pops up, that freaked me out. I wasn't expecting that. I was like, whoa. Even today, I get goosebumps. Here's my story about that movie. When I was a kid, we used to have a 3-bedroom house. I would sleep in either one of the 2 other bedrooms. Every once in a while, I would take my bed and put it in one room, and then I want to sleep in the other, put it in the other room, whatever. I remember being in this middle room, and it was really hot one night, and that room that I was sleeping at the time didn't have air conditioning. I don't know if you ever went through this up north, but down in Florida, if there's no AC and there's no ventilation, some nights in the summer you can't sleep because you're just sweating
Yeah,
on the bed, and you're not sick or anything. You're just sweating. So I couldn't sleep. And I don't know why I didn't do this because I wanted to sleep because I had to wake up early or whatever. But I remember hearing in the living room my mom was watching that movie
oh
we're going to be
God.
doing. And I'm like, and I didn't know what was going on. I go, we'll be back to the blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh, I wonder what that's all about. And then when I saw it, I was like, wow, I should have woken up and watched that one. That was a good one. But anyway, we'll get that one. We'll get to that one next time. So, but did you enjoy this movie at all? Do you think it was okay or
It was okay. It was fun for what it was. I had a feeling it was really chopped up,
it is?
which sometimes happens with those European movies. You get them, and I mean, Benny Hill used to do those fake European movies, and like scenes would be cut out of them, and so it's probably a common era because they were filmed, and usually they had multiple. Cast members from different countries, so they'd
Mhm.
all speak their own language, and then everything would get dubbed into whatever language
Mhm.
of the country was being shown in. So it was real choppy in some areas. But I've heard of Paul Naschy, and so I want to see more of his movies.
Oh yeah, we'll watch the. I didn't. I want to do this one because we hadn't done it before, but we'll watch
Yeah.
some point the Werewolf versus the Vampire Woman. And that's my favorite one of them. Yeah, but you're totally right about that. They were shot. I read where like Germany, somebody would have, okay, we need funding for this movie. Okay, the Germans would go, okay, we'll give you X amount of money, but you gotta take one of our stars because that
What?
way it'll play in Germany with starring, Maria of Rome or whatever. And then France will get involved and he goes, okay, or Italy, okay, you can have X amount of money, but you got to put in, Monica something or other. And okay, fine, we'll do it. And then, for the English language, well, Jack Taylor was American. He was living there, so they didn't have to worry about that. But I'm sure, but he speaks Spanish. But I don't know if I'm not sure if he actually spoke Spanish in the original or was just he's dubbing his own voice. But I'm not sure. I don't remember. But he speaks Spanish, so that took care of that. But again, these are European names, and when they come to the U.S., Paul Naschy's not his real name. His real name is Jacinto Molina. But I think he came up with that. I think he came up with that name. But some of these people, like Shirley Corrigan, I don't know if that's a real name or not. It looks like a Spanish woman, but I could be wrong. You could be a Brit, for all I
Yeah.
know. But a lot of times, in some other ones, they actually would get somebody like Christopher Lee, and then
Right.
they would put him up against somebody from Germany and put him up with somebody.
Right.
So it was more of an international feel to it. So, but
Yeah, and then, again, like they would film the scenes, and like they're going to show in Spain, they have to cut out certain scenes. They're going to show in Germany, they probably added
so
added scenes more like S&M stuff because that apparently plays big in Germany. For the Italian market, I don't know if they showed any in Poland, or probably not in Poland, but for the different markets.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
when it would come to the United States, they'd have to cut out different scenes and dub everything.
Yeah, they would have to submit it to the MPA, and they would go, "Look,
Yeah,
can you take this out, take that out?" And I don't know what rating they would want. I guess by the mid '70s they would want an R, but they would have to cut out something. In the late '60s they would cut out a lot more, but by the
yeah,
mid '70s, but I mean, I'm sure these movies played. Some of them ended up in television, but a lot of them ended
yeah,
up in grindhouses, as they say.
yeah, yeah,
Which every town had a grindhouse, which would have been like a little rundown theater that played something that the main theater couldn't get or whatever. It's like even where I lived, we had the big theater, but then there was a little theater called the Colonial Theater, and they would play like the rougher movies, but
yeah,
it wasn't like
yeah,
you were venturing into 42nd Street and taking your life
yes,
in your hands. It was just a
yes,
local crappy theater. And then there was also the Dollar Theater that
yeah,
played
you
all
too,
the.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, when I was a kid, I used to see like a first one. Let's say Rock and Roll High School, and every time I went to see, like, I'll give you two examples: Rock and Roll High School, and in a different time it was Cheech and Chong's Up in Smoke.
right,
Every time I would see a movie, it would see plus second feature Flesh Gordon, plus second feature
yes,
the
yes,
cheerleaders. They
yeah,
made the round. I must have seen those two movies as a second feature about 8, 10 times. But you know what? You'd stay watching them because they delivered what they were taught. They were like, okay, yeah, we'll sit through this one too. So we'll watch Rock and Roll
yeah.
High School, we'll watch Cheech and Chong, and then we'll
It's
see
like
this.
movies like the Groove Tube,
The Groove Tube was another one.
and there was another one I can't remember the name. Was a similar vein.
Tunnel Vision.
Tunnel Vision, that was it.
There was Tunnel Vision. There was The Groove too. There was Kentucky Fried Movie,
Yes.
which was
Yeah.
like my favorite of all of them. That was my Catholic high school Girls in
Goes in
Trouble.
Trouble.
That one hit a nerve with you and me for sure. We were like, yeah, okay, that's cool. Now,
Oh,
did you ever, as a kid or young adult, ever venture out to one of those crappy theaters on 42nd Street? Because you were in that
yeah.
area.
No, it had such a bad reputation. I didn't go to 42nd Street until I was probably in my 40s.
Oh
Because,
wow,
well, because well, also, see, at the time when I was in and around that area, parts of New York were really bad.
scary. Yeah, the
You
Bowery.
could lose your life
Yeah, the
and
Bowery
stuff.
places
Yeah,
like that.
drug addicts and drunks and weirdos and just crime everywhere. And this was when
Before
uh,
Giuliani.
no, this is a little after Giuliani, but no, it was with Giuliani. Yeah, um, they had Disney's store had come in. They had an M&M store.
They
They
cleaned it
closed.
all up.
Yeah, they cleaned it all up. So but even then, I was still a little nervous. Oh no, wait, you know what? I did walk through it once. It was around fall and it was dark, and you see all these
Characters.
stores and in bookstores, and it's like you just felt creepy and weird and
I mean, I was just wondering, because that was the infamous, the all night movies, and like people would just go in there and sleep it off. No bums would
flip it
just
off
pay,
or do other
or
things.
or kill somebody, or have
Yeah,
have unlawful carnal knowledge or whatever, whatever was going on there. I was just wondering
yeah.
if you ever went to the infamous 42nd Street where they played all those movies.
Just the once, and I walked through. I forget how I ended up there, but I'm like, oh my god, this is like Sodom and Gomorrah.
Well, don't they? Isn't it nowadays they have like naked women that are painted and they walk
Yeah,
around?
now it's starting to go downhill again, and
Yeah,
yeah, it's just,
yeah. So you never went to the infamous
no, I never went to
42nd Street? Okay, no, me neither. I was a little kid. I was too little, but we had our own little. We had drive-ins, which showed all this, and and all the little other things. Did they have drive-ins in your area there? Jersey,
uh,
probably. Jersey.
yeah, Jersey and Long Island.
Long Island had drive-ins. Okay.
Yeah, they had some drive-ins on Long Island. Some nice ones too. That's where
Oh,
I saw Mad Max in the drive-in. Did I see Alien in the drive-in? I think I may
wow.
have seen Alien in the drive-in. I remember seeing Legend from
Boggy
Boggy
Creek.
in the drive-in. I also saw some really crappy movie with Scott Brady.
Scott Brady. Yeah.
I can't remember, but it was what this guy did. He bought an old movie, and then he filmed new scenes with a really old alcoholic Scott Brady, and he sort of cut them in between. And they were after some murderer or monster or something.
Oh wow, I got to find out what that movie is. I
Yeah,
love Scott Brady. He was
yeah,
in so much crap.
yeah, and they would cut scenes in, and so the old movie was flashbacks.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
then I saw some movie. I don't know about Dracula or the Wolfman or so. I can't remember. And we caught I would I'd go to these with my dad. We caught the early show, and we couldn't really see the movie because it was still too light out.
Oh jeez.
So we're trying to watch, but then that feature ended, and by the time the Legend of Boggy Creek came on, because it was a double feature, then it was dark out, so it was okay.
But they would have played the other one again, but it would have been really late at night probably.
Yeah, late at night, and we're like, let's go home.
Oh wow, that's an interesting movie. Yeah, Scott Brady was Lawrence Tierney's brother, and Lawrence Tierney was
Yeah, that's
insane.
right. That's right.
Lawrence Tierney, I was reading or watching somebody on TCM talk about the man was insane. He was a maniac. He was also, I guess, his most famous movie is probably Reservoir Dogs or whatever. But yeah, Scott Brady was his brother. Yeah, Scott Brady did some real. He did about anything that was thrown at him for about
Yeah,
some
yeah,
bucks or whatever back in the day.
yeah.
Scott Brady,
Beer money.
yeah, Anthony Isley, John Carradine.
Yeah,
what was I watching? I don't know why I watched this movie. It was I was watching TCM and they said, well, we're having time travel night today, so we're gonna have a movie come with a great cast and they mentioned all these people, and then it was like, and John Carradine is in this. So I go, oh, John Carradine's in this movie, so I decided to watch it. It was Peggy Sue Got Married. It was an okay
Oh,
movie, okay movie.
I didn't like that
But
movie.
Carradine's in one scene, so I stuck around just for the one scene. It was kind of like a
Yeah,
low. It was not. I'm gonna call it low budget, but it was kind of like wanted to be Back to the Future or something like that.
yeah.
It wasn't that great. But Carradine's in one scene. And I'm thinking, is this the last movie he was in? I don't think it was, but it's '86, so it's close to the.
Man, they used to do that when you get those DVDs, those cheap ones.
Yeah.
And it would, like you say, starring John Carradine or
Yeah, yeah,
Josh
yeah.
Jackson. And it turns out, they're like
One
a
scene.
second, one scene, and you see them walking by as a waiter or something like that.
Yeah, yeah. It was just to get a. It was, not that that movie needed to get a name, but usually that would happen in a movie, like say by somebody else, Fred Olen Ray or something, where they would have a bunch of actresses or actors that were not well known. Plus John Carradine, and he would get like you said, John Carradine or somebody to
Yeah,
do one or two scenes, and then they could sell plus special guest star John
yeah, John
Carradine,
Carradine. Yeah,
and you're like, oh, Carradine's in. It's got to be at least.
yeah, it's got to be something.
But
It's
with
got
Fred
to
Olen
be
Ray
nothing.
movies, it was usually the boobs that were selling the movie, and some blood and guts too, but it was mostly the TNA or whatever, and John Carradine as the whatever, as the witch doctor, or as Doctor Evil. But
Yeah, he'd be sitting in
yeah,
a chair in a study somewhere, and we'd say
pretty
something.
much, yeah, he would be in a chair because he couldn't get up anymore or something. He was like old, and he was like, "I'll just sit in a chair and read these lines." All right, well, thanks, John. Here's like.
I seem to remember one movie where I forget who it was, but it said starring so and so, and they basically filmed his head, and it was like a head floating in space.
Was it Carradine?
It might have been, and
Sounds like something
it
called
was
Horrors of the Red Planet or something like
something
that.
like that. And he was at the beginning and at the end. It was like a couple of minutes of him talking, and the head was like,
I
that
think
special effect.
I think it's that movie. I just remember it on video as Horrors of the Red Planet. There's another name to it. I think I know it's not the Wizard of Mars or the something of Mars, but
Yeah, it's like starring John Carradine, and that's it. He's
you
only in the beginning and the
you
end.
saw it on video probably, I guess. Or
Probably, yeah, probably.
and
Yeah, I had to have seen it on video.
were
Or
you?
maybe like USA Up All Night or
Oh
one of
yeah,
the.
those guys. Yeah, that was another bummer about. I never watched that show much. I wish I would have, but I never did because there were TNA movies with the TNA cut out. I was like, what's the
Yeah,
point? Get
yeah,
Cinemax.
yeah, yeah,
Get Cinemax. you know.
exactly.
But the Up All Night, boy, that has fan base. I mean, a lot of people are like. I mean, I liked what's his face, Commander USA
Maybe you
better.
could say. Well, he showed more horror-ish
Yeah, yeah.
movies. And,
I didn't see that many of them because it was Saturday afternoons, and my parents, if they were home, they would commandeer the TV. So I didn't have cable in my room, so I got screwed. But I did see some of them, and I recorded a couple of them. I recorded a Paul Naschy movie. I recorded Horror of the Werewolf, which I think is the Werewolf and the Yeti. I have a DVD. I burned it on the DVD, so I did record one of those on there. But yeah, yeah, yeah. Dr. Commander, yeah, yeah. USA used to be a cool channel in the beginning. I haven't watched that channel since the
it's,
'90s.
I think it's all Law and Order reruns.
Oh, that stuff, yeah.
Yeah, one of those. That's what they do now. Now, like so USA, TNT,
Yeah,
and stuff like that. They just
TBS,
like
WGN.
one or two shows that they just run all the time. It's either Law and Order,
They binge them.
yeah, NCIS, all the different versions. For a while there was CSI,
Yeah.
all the different versions were on. I think they took those out of rotation.
D-
But it's like, well, what's the fucking point? Oh, excuse
It's
me.
all right.
What's the point of
I put explicit on our tag, so
okay?
not
What's the
that we're
point
gonna
of
say that every 5 minutes, but
what's the point of like putting that stuff on? Because I mean, there's so many things you could watch on TV. Old shows, even old like crappy comedy shows. There was a chat. I remember I was living on Long Island in New York, and this channel started up, channel 27,
a
29.
local UHF channel.
Yeah, local, yeah. And they started showing old TV shows. They were showing like Topper with Leo G. Carroll, I Married Joan with I can't remember, Joan Davis, some Bob Cummings, the Bob
Oh,
Cummings show. I mean, all these old TV shows, My Little Margie. And it was great because you haven't seen that in a while, and it's, you could watch them.
yeah.
And then it slowly started to show reruns of the same old crap, and then they started doing stupid movie. And then you lost interest in the channel because it's like every other channel on the TV. Even like Me TV and those other ones. They're showing Andy Griffith, MASH, Happy Days. It's like, how about some of the stuff?
I know. Anyway, we got to get going because I forgot to plug in my computer. Now my battery's
Okay.
dying. So,
All
anyway,
right.
we both like this movie. We both think you should check out Dr.
Yeah.
Jekyll and the Wolfman, and we're going to be back in a couple weeks, and we'll do that other movie we were supposed to do today. But yeah. So this is the Destination Nightmare B movie podcast. It's not the Two Dimension. And it's not Slow Robot A Go-Go. It's Destination
No.
Nightmare. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks. And I'm Al, and you are.
I'm Roddy.
And we will see you next time.
Yeah.
Haven't aged a day in 20 years. But do you know that one has not survived? And 7 are mental cases.
Top war criminals frozen alive at the height of their power, waiting for the moment when science will free them from their icy tombs to take vengeance against the world. And that moment is now.
Is there anything you require? Yes. Impossible. A live brain.
Another victim sacrificed to feed the inhuman needs of the frozen dead. Starring Dana Andrews as the scientist who tries in vain to wash the blood from his hand.
Mad. All of you.
A network of murderers dedicated to a monstrous project. Beware the icy stare of the frozen dead.